Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CoStar News Hotels podcast. I am news editor Sean McCracken, here with Gettys Group CEO Ron Swidler. Ron, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Great to see you, Sean. Thanks for making the time for a conversation.
Oh, thanks for giving your time for this conversation. I wanted to mention something about what your company is up top here, and my first impulse was to describe you guys as a design firm, but that feels so reductive for the kind of grand sweep of all you do. So maybe I will just tee you up. How would you describe Getty's Group?
Um, well, thanks for giving me an opportunity to expand on that definition. I think a lot of times people think of us as primarily a design firm, and while we are a design firm and we have a lot of projects that we've completed and active projects where we are the interior designer, we are much more like a services consultancy that happens to
Mhm,
provide branding services, interior design services at two different kind of stratifications. One in the boutique, unique, bespoke kind of lifestyle category, and one in the prototype design execution side. And then we also have a whole division of the company that focuses on procurement. We're a large buyer of hotel FF&E. And then we spun out, Sean, as you know, we spun out our hotel development side of the business into another company called Ridgeline Development Partners. But we are actively developing $400 million worth of projects right now in multiple city locations. So we think like an owner, and then we
mhm,
provide a series of services to support the value creation process for the hospitality owners.
mhm. So you get a kind of full scale perspective on the industry, which is, I'd say, valuable at a time like this.
I think it's helpful. I know that you see what we see, which is that deals are just requiring a level of creativity that we've never seen
Hmm.
before.
Yeah.
Whether it's how a project gets financed or how it goes into some dual branded solution or multi function kind of development solution. They're just everything requires creativity, patience, and probably drawing upon, I'll call it the wisdom that we've all gained over the years. I'll call it wisdom because I think it's this definition of both experience of doing the work, but also applying the insights that we're gaining as a result of doing so many projects. But yeah, it just feels like everyone is having to be creative these days.
Hmm. So speaking of creativity, I wanted to bring up, since we kind of chatted about this before this recording, this idea that we're at a point where a lot of people are regarding the hotel industry as a bit underinvested,
Mhm.
including a lot of the brands that are kind of pushing a little bit harder than they did in the immediate aftermath of the pandemic to get kind of more dollars into existing assets, just a little bit more owner investment to kind of keep guests happy, or kind of address the kind of aging nature of the industry. Obviously, from your guys' perspective as people who put your own money into projects, and obviously like people who work with other hotel owners, hotel brands on, what actually works. Like, how do you see, like, what do hotel owners, what do hotel brands need to prioritize in terms of putting their money into assets to kind of elevate them in a way that's meaningful?
Wow, we could cover a lot of ground in that category. So let me try to open up the conversation at least.
Mhm,
Um, you just touched on a couple of things. One, we have undersupply. We haven't introduced a lot of new hotel supply to keep up with what would be, as CoStar reports, the anticipated, growth in demand year over year. So you have more people looking for places to stay. And then we have underinvestment, undercapitalization going in to reinvestment into hotels for lots of reasons. Hotel brands have allowed some of their franchisees, and perhaps limiting it to their highest performing franchisees, to giving them some relief as it relates to when they have to go about doing renovations. Um,
mhm,
one of the things that we're hearing and seeing as it relates to pushback from those franchisees is, yes, everything costs more money, right? It's cost of goods, cost of services, cost of getting the goods to the site. It's hard to understand and project the return on investment associated with those capital expenditures. But
Yeah.
there has to be, part of the investment just has to be the brand equity. Meaning, if you are a franchisee, and we have 7 Marriott franchises as a developer ourselves, as a franchisee, we want other people to invest into those
Yeah.
brands to make sure that there's parity between assets and brand. So it's a real challenge for the brands, Sean, to be able to say, well, where is where are the places that are most valuable in each asset, not just at a brand level, but in each asset that
Hmm.
add meaningfully to the brand equity and the return on investment. So it isn't as simple as saying, let's put the money in the places where we can get an immediate return on investment and say, oh, if we put money in the guest rooms, we know we're going to get a bump in rate, or we're going to put money in the F&B outlets because we know we're going to get increased demand and maybe average check. It's more complicated than that. There are
Hmm.
so many buildings that have physical infrastructure requirements, investments required into them just to be more efficient, whether it's, HVAC systems or energy systems. Um, and you have buildings that are just getting older. So it's a very
Yeah.
complex problem. And I think that when we make recommendations either to the brands, we get hired by the brands to help them with the kind of refinement and enhancement and um, of their brands. What is the next version of this brand going to be like? And when we do that work, we are looking at anticipated change in consumer expectations. What are the
Hmm.
things that are going to be most important to them? Because we're all changing, and certainly traveler demands are continuing to change. And we also have a changing group of people who are traveling. I just got back from Europe. I teach a class in Lyon, France every summer with these graduate students, and they work on projects with us that we're actually doing at the firm here. And these are food and beverage concept development and recipe development. They're telling us, this young generation of travelers, these master students are saying, we need absolutely only responsible sourcing of our ingredients. And we don't want to see the carbon footprint and global impact that we didn't even measure before, where we're sourcing things from other parts of the world that end up just costing, having a greater cost than just the transaction itself on the world. So we're seeing changing expectations, we're changing
Hmm.
travelers, changing traveler groups. So predicting what is important to the future guests is very hard, but we're using some incredibly interesting tools right now. I may have shared with you this strategic partnership with a company called Vervey, Vurvey, started by a buddy of mine, Chad Reynolds, out of Cincinnati. And they are using AI technology as a predictive tool for consumer products. They're working with Unilever and Procter and Gamble, and they're testing products with real people, and then building up a database that is a combination of real responses, video responses from consumers who are testing these products, Dove products, Nike shoes, Legos, etc., with their AI database, and they're putting those things together and saying, this is what's most important to consumers now, and this is what's likely to be most important to consumers later.
Hmm.
And the consumers are broken down into like micro slices of these traveler types. So we
Hmm.
used to remember, Sean, how we would make these giant generalizations about business travelers and leisure
Yeah.
travelers
I
and
mean,
say,
used to.
oh,
It
yeah,
still happens quite a
I
bit.
know, I know. But we could get so much more specific, you know? It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
business traveler who is, going to be loyal to their workout program and their eating habits for one day, but not the second day. And they're going to be a urban explorer one day, but eat for convenience in the property the other day. I mean, like, we know so much more now about who we're trying to design for, that there's this
Mhm.
opportunity to incorporate that thinking into our designing and planning.
Mhm. So, it's all very interesting, and the theory behind it is fascinating to hear about, but I am curious specifically then, you mentioned sustainability, but what is it that guests of today want that are not getting from the current hotel experience by and large?
Oh, okay, so we're gonna have to get back up to generalizations there for a second. But you know what? On the basics level, look, I think guest satisfaction and likelihood to intent to recommend scores are lower because of quality of
Mhm,
product and quality of service. So just at a baseline level, you could say that what guests aren't getting that they really want is they still want great service. They want
mhm,
clean, comfortable, safe rooms. And look, there's also more of a desire for a design story
mhm,
than ever before. That's why we've seen this rapid growth in lifestyle hotels. And then there's also still a very large segment of the population that just wants the consistency of a prototypical design stay. But quality of food and beverage expectations have gone up. Obviously, we all live in a world where we're saturated by media and social media of pictures of food and descriptions of experiences that look pretty alluring. That part is really important as well. And yes, I think there is now more expectation of responsibility for
mhm.
the how hotels are running themselves and behaving. And it can be as something as simple as engaging with the guests in a way that feels sincere, supporting things locally by having local
Mhm.
performers coming and doing pop-up events, whether it's music or it's goods or whatever. I think guests continue to want to feel a taste of what is local, what is
Yeah.
special, what is curated. That part hasn't gone away, but the biggest thing is the value equation, Sean. I mean,
Mhm.
you're
Yeah.
paying more. You're being asked to pay more. And what is the guest getting in exchange for paying more?
Yeah.
And as look at what's happened with brand loyalty programs where they're saying that there is a resort fee. Now, call it whatever you want, but it's the same thing. There's an additional cost on top of your rate. And now, like Marriott is giving you a credit back that has to equal at least the value of, it's supposed to be 2x the value of what they're charging you for the resort fee by offering discounts at other places or something. It isn't enough to say you're getting your Wi-Fi for free or something. So,
Mhm.
um, these are creating the catalysts for doing unique things that give more back to those guests who are asking, "Wait a second, what am I getting for what I'm paying?" Um,
Mhm.
and I think that as operators are asked to be more creative, going back to our opening salvo there, um, I think that part of what they have to do is be creative in their execution of what
Yeah.
the quality of service is and the quality of the offering is, and keep it changing. That's I'm gonna answer your question with one more key component, which is, look, our industry is kind of a set it and forget it industry, right?
It very
We
much
went
is. Yeah.
yeah, and look at other industries like retail that is refreshing their offerings on a seasonal basis, um, and our industry can learn from that. It can learn from what are the components that we can kind of change on a more regular basis to keep the experience feeling timely and relevant.
You brought up, a bit ago, you brought up the kinda F&B component of this and people's increasing expectations. I am curious, kind of from your perspective, what you think of, I mean, what is that actually, people go on Instagram and they see, these amazing dining options, or is it now, if I'm a business traveler, I can go to whatever city and DoorDash or Uber Eats the best local fare that they have as opposed to settling for the kind of middling traditional room service option. Like, is it Is it people's standards are growing, or is that they have better options?
Well, both can be true at the same time.
I guess
Um,
that's fair, yes.
and I think we have that problem. I think first of all, if you're in in a location and and you're trying to source a place to eat, obviously it's very easy for you to through your handheld device to know not only what's available to you, but you can even be more specific about the
Mhm.
kind of cuisine or your price
Yeah.
point or whatever it is. Now, yes, that's number one. Is there is more competition in the immediate vicinity of most of the hotels if you wanna leave the hotel. And then there's the other problem, which is DoorDash and Uber Eats and the delivery, companies that are able to provide quality food to your room as an alternative to room service, which then makes you wonder, why would you even bother having room service as a brand?
Mhm.
So as the brands continue to evolve, what does a brand stand for? And think about the stratification of those brands, John, where you have so many brands within a portfolio, a parent brand like Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt or IHG, where they're already starting to swim in each other's swim lanes in terms of brands having differentiation of offerings.
Mhm.
Um, it used to be that it was an expectation of room service delivery, or at least, order and pickup at the outlet was a requirement for certain brands. Well, how long should the brands actually hold on to that as a brand requirement when there are better options available? And frankly, let's face it, when was the last time you ordered off of the room service menu?
Oh, geez. You know what?
Right, exactly. Oh,
I don't
geez is
remember.
the exactly, that is the answer. And if you looked at the cost of that, $30 burger delivered to your room compared to what you could get, even a better, a better option available delivered to you, for less
Mhm.
money, it just may not make financial sense in the long
Yeah.
term for some of these hotel brands to continue to hold on to some of the ways in which they're trying to deliver F&B. I'll give you one more other insight that you didn't name that I think is a factor in all of this. Remember that as probably a lot of your listeners are aware, the franchise agreements that are in place with these brands for these lifestyle hotels excludes food and beverage revenue sharing as part of the franchise agreement. So
Mhm.
if you are as we are, a Tribute Portfolio hotel owner, we share room revenue. We don't share F&B revenue with the brand as part of our franchise fees. So you would then think that we are incentivized to create as much revenue as we can out of the F&B outlets,
Mhm.
which means there's an incentive in place for us to effectively compete with the other destination dining options available within a given city. Um, but what that also means is we are burdened with the operational expense
Yeah.
associated with trying to run an outlet as effectively as a lot of other either one-off restaurants or restaurants that are part of restaurant groups
Mhm.
that have their own scale and efficiency and expertise and loyalty programs. So
And
it's a
restaurants are a famously easy business to succeed in, right?
very low failure rate. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, yeah, the turnover, think about that, Sean. The turnover in the restaurant industry is even higher than the turnover in the hotel industry.
Mhm.
So, and yeah, so there are all kinds of challenges associated with competing effectively to satisfy the demand of a consumer who is placing more importance on differentiated and desirable F&B.
Mhm.
Differentiated and desirable, right? Which means you as a owner need to understand what's in your market and not offer the same thing. And desirable, you need to know your guests and what they want. Um, and by the way, I think we have a tendency to give too much credit to people. I went to a restaurant on Sunday night with my wife and my in-laws, and I could show you the menu. It looks like the menu was developed by ChatGPT. It is like the most popular common. Oh, we have shrimp tacos, we have burgers, and we have a chopped salad. I mean, it was like the most
Yeah.
predictable food you could imagine, and the place was packed.
Mhm.
and the
Sometimes
turkey burger
sometimes
was
people are
20 bucks.
basic.
It's so basic. So, I think that there are people who have, I think that there are people who have more, it's kind of they have tastes and they have expectations, etcetera, um, and they want something more and different, and then there are
Mhm.
so many consumers or guests that are just give me something I'm familiar with
Yeah.
and that's satisfying. So for I think it's a pendulum. I think the pendulum
Mhm.
will swing towards a more dynamic, dramatic, mixology led, chef led, fusion cooking or whatever, and then it will start swinging back towards the more expected, um, and yeah, we're still at that place in the pendulum swing where
Mhm.
people expect more, but we're not at that far edge of the swing where you're going to be rewarded for taking the risk of doing something that is bizarre.
Okay, so combining that kind of thought with what we were discussing earlier, obviously, if you're making a big investment, doing the PIP, doing a big reno on your hotel today, ideally, in the traditional thinking of the industry, you won't really be touching it again until what, 2033 then, right? Like if it's a 7 year horizon. I mean, that's I know that's out of date in
That's
a
it.
lot
No,
of
no,
ways,
no,
but
no. That is right. So I would take that little timeline scenario one step further back, though, Sean. So
mhm,
we were working with Hilton on redeveloping the Hampton brand. We've worked with them on and off for years on that brand, and it's an
mhm,
incredible brand, as you know, an incredibly successful brand. And what we realized was we were going to work on the brand for a couple years. Then they were going to give the franchisees, once we roll it out, they'll give the franchisees a couple of years before they have to institute that new standard.
yeah.
And then that standard has to sit in place for at least 7 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So, how good is your crystal ball, Sean? Because, I mean,
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you,
yeah.
like, how are you guessing what people want in 2033 or I guess on your timetable, 2035, or if they're doing this work in 2030, then we're talking about 2037, like, how are we possibly guessing what people want then, right?
It's very difficult, and AI is very helpful. But we do have some predictive modeling that we've used. A lot of that is based on demographics and also
Mhm,
geographics. Where else in the world is, for example, the Hampton brand dealing with a rapidly aging population where incorporation of more accessibility is already
mhm,
becoming part of the standard? Or one of the other things we were doing was the trend towards food and beverage activation for Hampton actually in the
mhm,
lobby and exploring the notion of a bar as a revenue generator and guest satisfier within America when it became a European standard far earlier. So,
mhm,
so we're looking everywhere we possibly can. And the other thing that we do that not a lot of time, not enough time is spent on is look at what other industries are doing, not just the
yeah,
hospitality industry, but look at healthcare, look at higher ed. We're doing a project at Northwestern University for Kellogg right now. It's a combination of hotel and school facilities. And we're pitching another project of a similar nature right now out in Texas. There's a really interesting kind of insights that you can gain from
mhm,
another industry like higher ed and and then look at that as a potential growth area for a combination of real estate uses. And I think you know, we're going to continue to try to be as smart as we can and have that crystal ball. But um, of course, we're looking at what isn't being done that there is an opportunity to do now, where it's not oversaturated with examples
mhm,
uh, of projects that have been completed by others. Because once it's done by someone else, you can measure how effective it is.
yeah.
The hard part is trying to be predictive.
So, as you mentioned, you guys work with brands, a lot of focus on, the experience and all that. the common refrain you always hear from hotel owners in particular is there's so many hotel brands, there's too many brands, they're not different. We've all heard this a million times. I don't need to explain it. I'm wondering from your perspective though, A, do you buy into that train of thought? And B, what do you think it takes for a hotel brand to stand out as a brand in the kind of the ecosystem we're in right now?
Oh, that's a great question. So, first, let me answer the first part of your question. Do I believe we're oversaturated with brands? Yes, I do. Um, we just ran an exercise here in the office for the interns that we hired for this summer, and we put all the brand names up on the wall, and the parent brand, and all the sub brand names as separate cards. And we asked the interns to work together to place those brands under the parent brand of each of the parent brands, and they scored about 75% right,
Mhm.
because there are too many brands. And even those of us who know the industry very, very well still would have a hard time. Yes, I could tell you that this brand is part of that brand family, but could I get the ranking right in terms of
Yeah.
ADR for each of them? And then one
I'm
step
fearful
further.
how I would do on that exercise.
And then go one step further in that exercise, Sean, which is try to write a few words that describe that brand
Mhm.
differently than you would find words to describe all of the other brands within the segmentation.
I
That
was not that great in school to begin with. I don't think I would grade well on this particular test.
it's nearly impossible without AI. Um, so yes, I think that there are too many brands, and so then ask let's go to your second question, which is how do you differentiate one brand from another? The only answer I can give you is that you have to keep evolving each brand.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
the only answer because, um, we're talking to one of the brands right now about the next evolution of their brand, and they don't want to be known just for, the one or two things that the brand is already associated with. And so the question becomes, how do you evolve that brand? And the first question is, how do you avoid running into the swim lanes of the other brands?
Mhm.
And what is your aspiration for repositioning? If this brand, is it meant to stay exactly where it is in its stratification or segmentation, or is this an attempt to raise it up in order to then justify or convince the franchisee that they should spend the money on investing in renovation to that new standard because there will be a significant return on investment other than just a defensive posture? Will they be able to capture, more than their fair share of the market or bump in rate as a
Mhm.
result of doing this? That is so hard.
Yeah.
And and I think that the answer really has to be you have to keep evolving these brands, because if I asked you then in that same theoretical exercise that we've been playing out here, I want you to put dots on the brands that have kind of refined themselves within the last 5 years or 10 years, and put different colored dots on the ones that are getting stale. That's an interesting exercise too.
Yeah. I imagine getting to the point we were making earlier about the kind of timetable of these things not lining up. I think the interesting part about that too is that, as a consumer, as a traveler, I don't know if I would have the direct interaction with enough brands recently to say X brand is keeping up with it to date. And even if I did, like, did I stay at the franchise that individually isn't keeping up? It's so messy, you
It
know?
is messy, but and imagine for a second if you are, call it brand X for a second. You're staying at a great example of a new build brand X or a recently renovated brand X. It's going to change your perception of that brand. And all you really care about as a consumer, as a guest, as a traveler is the quality of that asset in that
Yeah.
market.
Yes,
But what the
100%.
brand cares about and what the franchisees care about is what is the expectation across the portfolio, because that is what's going to be imposed upon you as the
Mhm.
franchisee. Or, here's the other thing, Sean. The value of these large hotel companies are not really based upon the value of their individual brands.
Yeah.
It's based upon the franchise fee stream that they're
Yeah.
getting from all of their brands collectively. And
It's net
unless you
unit
go
growth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not Uniqlo. Unless you go really off the rails, and there have been some examples of brands that have just not paid enough attention to maintaining brand quality. Um, Basically, I think guests are a little too forgiving.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. You bring that up too, and it is so fundamentally true. For me as a human being, like, you bring up Hampton and you guys putting in work to kind of revitalize that brand or bring new ideas into it. But for I think my brain is so crystallized when I think of Hampton Inn, I think of the Hampton Inn in Hamburg, New York that I stay in when I go to Buffalo Bills games. Like it's so like
Yes,
minute and
exactly.
specific.
Yes,
Like,
exactly. You're associating it with your own personal experience and the quality. And that is part of the beauty of Hampton, though. I mean, Hilton
mhm,
has done a brilliant job of maintaining brand quality across their portfolio for that brand, and great credit to them for doing that. Um, there is more brand consistency with that brand. There has been a
mhm,
lot of brand reinvestment. Um, and that's why I don't know what the latest statistic is, but I remember when we were working with them, they were the number one franchise brand in America ahead of McDonald's and Subway for 7 years, according to Inc. magazine. So
mhm.
um, this is you want to build a power brand, a single power brand. I mean, that's a good one to take as a case study and learn from.
Yeah. And it is a reminder that when we talk a kind about this, like, proliferation, I can speak, proliferation of brands, there is this kind of counter idea of, like, people want every brand has to be so specific and so special. Like, not to say that Hampton is not specific or special, but it is a pretty traditional hotel brand, and it serves a very vital and useful role in the travel ecosystem. So it's not like everything needs to be so overly engineered, right? Like we don't have to reinvent the
That
wheel with every hotel brand.
that is an important thing to bear in mind, and that's one of the benefits I think of the Gettys Group's kind of ethos, because we are developers ourselves, because we have years and years, 38 years I've been with this company, Sean. We have years and years of kind of solving these hospitality related problems for our clients. We
Mhm,
have a lot of trust in the industry, which we're so grateful for. Um, Part of the trust that we've gained over the years is helping navigate this process that is requiring a creative solution to where we spend money, how we spend money, and putting not overspending. Because I think that there is, as again, let's go back to the pendulum idea. As the pendulum swung towards lifestyle, unique boutique, et cetera, there's no guidebook that says, is as much as I respect Marriott's Autograph Collection or Tribute Portfolio or Hilton's Tapestries and Curios, there isn't a guidebook that says invest this much here in order to almost gamify the future guest experience to the appropriate level that can justify this kind of competitive positioning and rate, et cetera.
mhm,
So instead, there's a lot of trust that's required for agencies like ours to help guide our clients towards spend money here, spend this much money here, spend it on this detail, not that detail, and um, and it isn't. You can tell the difference now. There was a great article by my friend Bashar Wali about essentially color by numbers for um, boutique lifestyle hotels. He said, I've walked into too many hotels where it looks like someone has used AI to determine what are the key elements of a hotel that would
mhm.
signify to the guest that this is a cool boutique hotel. And he
Sounds like
listed
something Bashar would say.
it's a really good article, Sean. You should
Yeah.
read it actually. Um, and I love that he was calling people out because it's not as easy as it looks. It isn't
Mhm,
a paint by numbers solution, and it is difficult to navigate the process of creating the right level of investment to get a suitable return on that investment.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, going back to this notion of trust is, yes, is based on experience and wisdom, but it's also based on, kind of being aware of the shifting sands of consumer
Mhm.
expectations all the time.
Yep. Which, easy task, right? All right, Ron. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. We've gone way over the time I had allotted for you, but I'm extremely thankful for all of the insights you've shared
Oh,
today.
it's my pleasure.
I'm Terence Baker, News Editor, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I'm the host of The Upgrade, a CoStar News Hotels podcast for the EMEA region. In it, I discuss with special guests the pressures, challenges, joys and exhilaration that comes with managing, owning and developing hotels in our glorious multifaceted industry. Discovering the EMEA region from the scenic northern shores of Norway to heights of Table Mountain in South Africa, and most likely some chat about birdwatching, distance running and the English Premiership. Join us wherever you find your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify and on other platforms.
This episode of the CoStar News Hotels podcast was recorded on July 28th, 2026 and edited by me, Sean McCracken. Visit costar.com/hotel news for all the latest information on the global hotel industry and find all of our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen.